Hey guys, it's Cody, and today I am going to set up my new copper Leuchtturm. I am switching from my previous little blue one to my copper one, and I'll also be able to set up for September. Now, this video is out super late because Hurricane Dorian happened to go through Florida or around Florida the beginning of September. So I did film this as we were waiting for Hurricane Dorian to possibly make landfall. She stalled over the Bahamas, so we were lucky here in Florida that it didn't hit, but unfortunately the Bahamas were not as lucky and they could use prayers and donation. I'm not going to put any links for that because I don't know who's reputable, but you can certainly find out through your local areas. But as you can see, I'm doing my flip through of my old journal. You can see different spreads I've tried. You can see different collections I've gone through. You can see how I really am not precious with my little mini bullet journal. The whole point of this little guy is to just get out what I'm thinking and to work through and process information as it's coming into my brain so that I can properly figure out if it's worth my attention. Since I have ADD, it's really hard to focus on things, and if I have a lot of thoughts or if I'm working through a project, I often end up bogged down by that project and I cannot focus on anything but that project, or I'm oversaturated with information to the point where I just don't want to deal with it at all. So the little bullet journal for me helps my ADD kind of get out everything I'm thinking so that I can work through okay, yes, this is where you need to spend your energy on chores and on, work and important things. And you don't need to spend your time on, gaming all day. Unless, of course, I have time. But I need to see that visually. So that's kind of how I work in the little bullet journal. I have a whole video explaining how I work through it in another video, so you can go to my channel and see that. But now what I'm doing is I'm going through the entire little bullet journal and I'm making sure that all of my tasks that I have in here are relevant or completed so that I no longer have to reference this book. I'm also doing something new. I am creating an index. This is the first time I've ever indexed a book. I've tried one many years ago, back when I was in A5. I got maybe 4 little lines of index and then I stopped because for me, I visually see it where it's in the book. I visually know where it is, and because I've written it down, I typically know the date. So I didn't need an index. But I'm getting older, my schedule is getting a little busier. I do have a fur baby, his name is Bubby, that I take care of. He's an inside-outside cat, and he takes a lot of my energy. Of course, I have a home to run, and then of course my special needs brother has been in and out of the hospitals, and this bullet journal has a lot of that information from when he was in and out of hospitals. And while I'm not his primary caregiver, that is my mother, I often help my mother out when I can, and she relies on me for information. So I try to keep a record of all of that information. So what I'm doing is indexing. Now I'm indexing a little bit different than the typical indexing way. I'm indexing in categories. I got this idea from Romany. I will have her channel linked down below. And she also found the index kind of useless, but when you categorize it in a way that makes sense for you, it actually ends up streamlining your thought processes. I think that's how I want to say that. Basically, what I've done is I categorized monthly and daily logs, so all of my mindless task information into one list, all of my collections, so everything that might be useful in the future, I have on another list. And then lastly, I have visual reminders. I ended up needing a lot more room for my collection page, my collection index, than I had thought. So going forward, I actually did my index a little bit different. But since this was the first time, I didn't realize how much I actually use collections. And if you're new to bullet journal, a collection is basically supposed to be a 2-page spread where you collect information of a similar topic or theme. The most famous probably is being like a movie watcher tracking list or a book recommendation list or something about, like media. My collections tend to be more brainstorming ideas, so like a new planner idea. Do I want an A5 or a B6, or do I want to go happy planner rings? Or sometimes it's about my house, like I'm noticing I'm missing my extra keys, and I'm missing my ring, and I'm missing the remote. And while those, obviously the remote, if you watch TV daily, is kind of vital, but most of those things weren't vital enough to write down by themselves. But as I started noticing multiple things missing, I wrote a collection based off of that. And that's kind of how my collections happen. They're more, I'm thinking of a project and I just go ahead to the next blank page in my journal and write it out, no matter what it happens to be about or where it happens to land. In the bullet journal method, you're meant to do like a 2-page spread. So your 2 facing pages are the same collection. But since for me, I never really reference back to those collections, I tend to not need 2 pages. It's more of a collection of thoughts or projects that I'm thinking right now that I can process through and turn them into actions later on. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my brain and how I work in my bullet journal, but it might not make sense to somebody else. It's a really interesting way for me to explain how my brain works in my bullet journal to you guys. It's because it's so who I am. It's just I do it. There is no like thought process behind it. So trying to relay those thoughts that don't happen to somebody who doesn't know what's happening in my brain is interesting. Anyways, back at what I'm doing, I'm just going through the entire journal. This is something that you probably should do as you're filling out your journal, but I didn't know if I was going to index, and since this was kind of an important time of my life, like I said, my brother was in the hospital, and then of course right at the end of this journal was Hurricane Dorian, I figured that I would go ahead and index it. So I'm getting to the end of me indexing, and I'm going to get into setting up my new bullet journal. So, new angle. Sorry for all the different angle changes, but I don't have an overhead tripod, so I'm just kind of propping my phone up on something so you guys can see. And basically, I set it up my bullet journal a little bit different this time. I typically don't have like beginner pages. I usually jump straight into the month. But I've noticed that I tend to have the same collections in each of my little mini bullet journals. And usually, since I set up within the, right at the month's beginning and I just go straight into the month, they end up within a month. And I realized that I'm referencing back to those collections quite often. So I decided to put the collections that I wrote in each of my bullet journals previous straight into the front. I hope that makes sense. But basically, I have a collection. I finally have a future log collection. Not sure if I'm going to use it, but I have it there just in case, mostly because I do have dental appointments coming up, and so I know that it will be good for my dental appointments. Then I also have a list or a collection, and this is an actual spread of what to talk about my spouse. He works 40 hours a week, and it's normal, but then he also gets a lot of overtime because he's in IT security. So sometimes he works, about 50 hours, and sometimes he even goes over that. And so it's hard for us to sometimes get on the same page and I'll think of something that I want to tell him when he comes home, but of course my ADD gets lost. All of that information gets lost. So I have a little list ready to go for when we have a chance to talk. I can quickly find something that I wanted to say to him. I also have an apartment list and a house list, and those are new, but they're things that I would want in a future house, and then things I want in the future for my apartment. We're not completely sure if I'm going to get a house yet, but it's something that has been playing in my mind, so I thought, why not make a collection, and if we decide to get a house, great, I'll have a list, and if not, well, then that's okay too. So I already have moved into my September. I am way faster in this video than I am talking, but basically it's the same setup in my August. Here in a few seconds, I will do a kind of overhead flip through, but basically I have purpose of my journal. I have 2 spreads for my future collection or future calendar going to May. I have my spouse to talk about list, my apartment and future list, Sims 4 baby list, I play Sims 4, September mini calendar, regular calendar, my monthly tasks, my goals, my budget, my wish list, and open tasks. So that's everything in my bullet journal. I hope you liked this video. I hope everything made sense. Give me a comment and a like if it did. And if you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe. Maybe click the bell if you want. And thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a good one. And bye-bye.